The Mongol invasion of Japan and the birth of the kamikaze legend. Picture a massive fleet of warships darkening the horizon. 30,000 warriors ready their weapons as storm clouds gather ominously overhead. The year is 1281, and the largest naval invasion force the world had ever seen is approaching the shores of Japan. But this isn't World War II, this is the Mongol invasion, a pivotal moment that would shape Japan's destiny and give birth to one of history's most enduring legends, the Divine Wind, or kamikaze. While most Americans are familiar with Japan's role in World War II, the island nation's military history stretches back centuries before Pearl Harbor, filled with epic battles, unlikely heroes, and supernatural twists that would make Hollywood screenwriters jealous. Today, we're diving deep into Japan's forgotten wars, conflicts that not only shaped a nation, but revolutionized warfare itself. Imagine yourself standing on the deck of a Mongol ship in 1281. You're part of Kublai Khan's mighty army, fresh from conquering China and ready to add Japan to your growing empire. The first invasion attempt 7 years ago failed, but this time, you have more than 4,400 ships and an army larger than the one that conquered continental Europe. Victory seems certain. But the Japanese defenders aren't going down without a fight. They've spent years preparing for this moment, building a massive stone wall along the coast of Hakata Bay. Unlike the Mongols' previous victims, the samurai of Japan don't fear your horseback archery tactics. They've adapted, developed new fighting techniques, and are ready to meet your invasion force head-on. The battle begins, and it's unlike anything either side has seen before. Mongol soldiers, accustomed to fighting on vast steppes, find themselves cramped on small beaches, their legendary mobility neutralized. Japanese samurai, traditionally trained in one-on-one combat, must adapt to face waves of coordinated attacks. The clash of these two military traditions creates a new kind of warfare. But nature has other plans. As the battles rage on, dark clouds gather over the battlefield. The locals recognize the signs. A typhoon is coming. But this is no ordinary storm. What happens next will become one of history's most famous examples of divine intervention. The typhoon strikes with unprecedented fury. Mongol ships, designed for the calm rivers of China, prove no match for the fierce waves. Thousands of vessels are smashed against the rocks or capsized by the violent winds. Nearly half of the invasion force drowns in the churning waters. The survivors, crammed onto the remaining ships, fall easy prey to Japanese defenders. This divine wind, kamikaze in Japanese, destroyed the Mongol fleet and saved Japan from invasion. It was seen as proof of the gods' protection, a belief that would influence Japanese military thinking for centuries to come. But this is just one of many forgotten wars that shaped Japan's destiny. Let's fast forward 2 centuries to another pivotal moment in Japanese history, the Onin War of 1467. While Europeans were just beginning their renaissance, Japan was about to plunge into an era of unprecedented civil war that would last for over a century. The Onin War didn't just change Japan. It completely transformed the nature of Japanese warfare and society. Picture Kyoto, Japan's imperial capital, a city of elegant palaces and serene temples. Now imagine it in flames, as rival samurai clans turn its streets into battlefields. The conflict began as a dispute over who would succeed the ruling shogun, but it quickly spiraled into something much bigger, the complete breakdown of central authority in Japan. This wasn't just any civil war. The Onin War marked the beginning of the Sengoku period, or the Age of Warring States, a time when Japan fractured into dozens of rival territories, each controlled by a powerful warlord, or daimyo. These weren't the honorable one-on-one duels we often associate with samurai warfare. This was total war, where massive armies clashed in battles involving tens of thousands of warriors. The warfare of this period would be unrecognizable to the samurai of previous generations. Traditional samurai combat centered around individual skill and honor. But the Sengoku period saw the rise of mass armies, complex siege tactics, and the first widespread use of firearms in Japan. Yes, you heard that right. Japanese warriors were using guns long before Commodore Perry's black ships arrived in the 19th century. The introduction of firearms to Japan changed everything. In 1543, Portuguese traders arrived on a small island in southern Japan with strange weapons that would revolutionize warfare, matchlock guns. Within months, Japanese craftsmen were not just copying these weapons, they were improving them. By 1575, Japan was producing more guns than any European country. But here's where it gets really interesting. While European armies were still figuring out how to effectively use firearms, Japanese warlords had already developed sophisticated tactics combining guns with traditional weapons. The Battle of Nagashino in 1575 would prove to be one of history's most innovative military engagements, and most Americans have never heard of it. Picture this. 38,000 soldiers under Oda Nobunaga face off against 15,000 of Japan's most elite cavalry. The Takeda clan's cavalry was considered invincible, their charging horses and skilled samurai having won countless battles. But Nobunaga had a surprise waiting. He positioned 3,000 gunners behind wooden stockades, arranged in 3 ranks. While one rank fired, another reloaded, and the third cleaned their weapons. A rotating firing system that wouldn't be seen in Europe until nearly a century later. The result was devastating. Wave after wave of Takeda's legendary cavalry charged forward, only to be cut down by synchronized volleys of gunfire. It was like watching the future of warfare clash with its past. The battle changed Japanese military tactics forever and marked the beginning of a new era in warfare. But Nobunaga's innovations didn't stop there. He revolutionized Japanese warfare in ways that would seem familiar to modern American military strategists. He was the first to implement a unified command structure, standardize equipment for his troops, and establish supply lines that could support large armies in the field. In many ways, he was creating a modern army centuries before the concept existed in the West. Yet the most dramatic chapters of Japan's forgotten wars were still to come. The year is 1582, and Oda Nobunaga, the man who seemed destined to unify Japan, is betrayed and forced to commit suicide by one of his own generals. This shocking turn of events leads to one of history's most incredible revenge stories. Enter Toyotomi Hideyoshi, a man who started as a sandal bearer and rose to become one of Japan's greatest rulers. When his master Nobunaga was killed, Hideyoshi accomplished what military historians consider nearly impossible. He marched his army 120 miles in just 3 days, caught the betrayer completely by surprise, and avenged his master's death. This feat would be impressive even by today's standards with modern transportation. But the real game changer came at the Battle of Shizugatake in 1583. This battle showcased what historians now call revolutionary siege warfare. Hideyoshi's forces constructed fortress walls at speeds that would impress modern combat engineers. They built complete fortifications in days, not months, using innovative techniques that combined traditional Japanese architecture with European-inspired defensive designs. Think of it like this. While European castles were built to last centuries, Japanese fortifications were designed to be constructed rapidly and serve immediate tactical purposes. It was like the difference between building a permanent house and setting up a sophisticated military base. This approach to warfare was centuries ahead of its time. The battle itself was a masterclass in combined arms tactics. Hideyoshi used a complex combination of artillery, cavalry, infantry, and even psychological warfare. He had his men light thousands of extra campfires at night to make his army appear larger than it was, a trick that American General George Patton would famously use during World War II's Operation Fortitude. But perhaps the most shocking aspect of these forgotten wars was their scale. The Battle of Sekigahara in 1600, which would finally determine Japan's fate, involved 160,000 warriors, more than the number of soldiers who fought at the Battle of Gettysburg. The stakes were enormous. This single battle would determine who would rule Japan for the next 250 years. Dawn breaks on October 21, 1600. A heavy fog blankets the fields of Sekigahara as 160,000 warriors prepare for battle. This isn't just another fight. It's the culmination of centuries of civil war, a battle that would determine Japan's fate for the next 250 years. Think of it as Japan's Gettysburg, D-Day, and Independence Day, all rolled into one monumental conflict. On one side stands Tokugawa Ieyasu, a brilliant strategist who had spent decades building alliances and preparing for this moment. On the other, Ishida Mitsunari leads the loyalist forces, fighting to preserve the legacy of Toyotomi Hideyoshi. But this battle would be decided by more than just military might. It would hinge on loyalty, betrayal, and split-second decisions. The battle begins in the fog-shrouded valley. The sound of thousands of war drums and conch shells fills the air as massive armies clash. But the real drama unfolds behind the scenes. Tokugawa had secretly convinced several key commanders on the opposing side to switch allegiance during the battle. It was like having several NFL teams secretly agree to switch sides halfway through the Super Bowl. The turning point comes when Kobayakawa Hideaki, commanding 15,000 troops on a crucial hillside position, finally makes his move. His forces, initially aligned with Ishida, suddenly turn and charge down the hill, not against Tokugawa's army, but against their former allies. This betrayal triggers a cascade of defections that would seal the battle's outcome. The fighting is unlike anything seen before in Japanese history. Matchlock guns thunder across the battlefield, cavalry charges clash with spear formations, and samurai engage in desperate hand-to-hand combat. The scale of the conflict is staggering. More arrows were fired at Sekigahara than bullets at the Battle of Bull Run. By the end of the day, 40,000 warriors lay dead or wounded. The battle transforms the political landscape of Japan overnight. Tokugawa's victory leads to the establishment of the Tokugawa shogunate, a period of peace and isolation that would last until American Commodore Perry's arrival in 1853. But here's where this history gets really interesting for modern viewers. The Tokugawa victory at Sekigahara didn't just end a war, it created a unique social and political system that would shape Japan's modern identity. The Tokugawa shoguns established a rigid social hierarchy, centralized bureaucracy, and urban culture that laid the groundwork for Japan's rapid modernization in the 19th century. Think about it this way. While European nations were constantly at war with each other, Japan enjoyed over 2 centuries of peace under Tokugawa rule. This period allowed for the development of what we now consider classical Japanese culture, the tea ceremony, kabuki theater, and sophisticated artistic traditions that still influence global pop culture today. The innovations in military technology and tactics developed during Japan's forgotten wars would have far-reaching consequences. The rotating firing lines used at Nagashino would be mirrored in European warfare centuries later. The rapid construction techniques developed for Japanese castles would influence modern military engineering. Even the concepts of loyalty and betrayal that played out at Sekigahara would find echoes in modern corporate and political strategies. But perhaps the most surprising legacy of these forgotten wars is their influence on modern Japan's self-defense forces. The discipline, precision, and innovative spirit that characterized the samurai armies of the Sengoku period can still be seen in Japan's modern military organization. The strategic principles developed during these wars, from the importance of technological advancement to the value of defensive preparations, continue to shape Japanese military thinking today. These forgotten wars remind us that history isn't just about memorizing dates and names. It's about understanding how past events shape our present world. The battles we've explored today didn't just change Japan. They demonstrated universal principles about innovation, leadership, and the impact of technological change that remain relevant in our modern world. From the divine wind that saved Japan from Mongol invasion to the gunpowder revolution of the Sengoku period, and finally to the epic Battle of Sekigahara, Japan's forgotten wars tell a story of innovation, adaptation, and transformation that rivals any military history in the world. They show us that sometimes the most significant moments in history are the ones we know the least about. Thank you for joining us on this journey through Japan's extraordinary military past. If you enjoyed this deep dive into history, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more fascinating stories about Japan's hidden history. Also, let us know in the comments which aspect of Japan's forgotten wars surprised you the most. Was it the early adoption of firearms, the sophisticated military tactics, or the scale of these epic battles? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Remember to hit that notification bell to stay updated on our upcoming videos about Japan's amazing history and culture. Until next time, sayonara.